Where did the time go? This week just flew. It must be because I am in the best company, yours. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, brought to you by these guys, Lay of the Land, where we take a look at those top stories making headlines in Israel. We do it every Monday to Thursday. It is day 179 since the start of Israel's war with Hamas. And I know many of you are out there thinking, when will this war end? And hopefully we are seeing some progress on that front. So that brings me to one of our top stories, and there is cautious optimism coming from the negotiations that are taking place in Doha at the moment. Some sources cite that a deal already has been signed, but I think until we hear it from both Hamas and from Israel, we don't have a deal. What we do have now is cautious optimism and negotiations that are still continuing. So what are the sticking points? Our Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, has said there is a very, very limited window of opportunity to bring home the hostages. There are 120 hostages still being held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. We don't know exactly how many are still alive. We have some intelligence how many either were taken dead on the 7th of October, killed by Hamas, or have been murdered in captivity. All we know is that we want all 120 alive and dead back home in Israel, where they can either start the road to recovery or be buried with the dignity and respect that they deserve. Some of those bodies that await burial are not Israeli. Some of them come from different countries. We have 2 Tanzanian nationals. We have Thai nationals. We have others that deserve to be brought home and buried with dignity. So some of the issues that still remain is the preventing of thousands of armed Hamas members from returning to northern Gaza. That brings them very, very close to some of the communities that were hit the hardest. And for Israel's security assurances, we don't want any armed Hamas operatives on our border there. And one of the other sticking points is who will maintain control over Rafah and the Philadelphia corridor. That Philadelphia corridor is a key buffer zone between Israel and Egypt. Israel is proposing that there will be sensors along the routes, and an accepted Palestinian presence. However, this must exclude Hamas. From Israel's perspective, we don't want Hamas to have any military capabilities and any governing or political capabilities. Now, the Prime Minister's office has said that there is no flexibility over core security principles, and that we insist from Israel's perspective on preventing any armed Hamas members from having any freedom of movement and maintaining control over strategic points. Some of the post-war ideas that have been flouted is to bring in a peacekeeping force made up of various Arab countries. These discussions are still underway. What we do know is that Israel does not want to reoccupy Gaza. So anybody putting that out there, that is absolutely factually incorrect. Israel would prefer not to be involved in the Gaza Strip at all. Former hostage Andre Kozlov, if you recall, he was rescued by our elite Yamam and the IDF just last month. He has started giving interviews. He will sit down with one of our TV networks tomorrow night, but he has spoken to Walla, which is an Israeli or Hebrew daily, and he speaks about the conditions that hostages have been kept in. He says that it is an absolute imperative to bring them all home now. He spoke about how he endured punishment and prolonged psychological torture and would often play mental games to try and keep himself sane. And he says that he prayed, all he could visualize was the day he would be released, and that the day that he was rescued and brought home to Israel was just the happiest day of his life. I don't think any of us can truly understand the depths of what our hostages have endured, but we do know that it is absolutely crucial that we bring the remaining hostages home, or that they are released immediately. I get a lot of messages throughout the day by some people saying, no negotiations, no ceasefire agreements. But I think what we have to understand is that, imagine these hostages were your siblings or your children or your parents. You would do anything in the world to make sure that they come home. And also, living through a war, and this is my personal experience, it's absolutely brutal. It's brutal on us in Israel, who are still deeply, deeply traumatized. We still have not moved on, and I don't know when we will be ready to move on from the 7th of October. And it's also deeply traumatizing for Palestinians in Gaza, and that is actually the subject of the audience question for the day, so I'm going to get to that in a few minutes, but let's continue. A Fly Dubai flight en route from Sri Lanka had to make an emergency landing. The flight had 2 Israelis aboard, and they had to make an emergency landing in Karachi in Pakistan. Now, why is this newsworthy, you might ask? Well, I will tell you. Israel has no diplomatic relations with Pakistan, and of course there were concerns for the safety and the security of the 2 Israelis on board. However, Israel's foreign ministry said we worked with others. They say, they won't say who, they just said they worked with others to ensure that the 2 Israelis were kept safe and unarmed, and the flight resumed soon after that. I think why it's also newsworthy is because we are very aware of hostility facing Jews and Israelis around the world. Just a few weeks ago, we had that issue in Turkey, where an El Al flight had to make an emergency landing because of a medical issue, and the ground control would not allow them to leave, and it was absolutely frightening. And thank goodness that we were able to get that El Al flight off and able to refuel in Cyprus. But we have a real fear for the safety of Israeli nationals when they are in countries that do have some hostility towards Israel. We had that other horrific incident right at the beginning of the war in one of the former Soviet areas, where a mob went for the airport, hounded the airport and said, we've come for the Israelis, we've come for the Jews. So there are these concerns, but thank goodness everybody is safe and sound. I can't say that much for my brain. It's curdling in this heat and humidity. And finally, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Aid have said that humanitarian aid coming into Gaza is impeded by Hamas. They say that there are often groups of men with sticks and arms that attempt to loot these humanitarian aid trucks, and this goes to show that the complete rule of law has broken down in the Gaza Strip. But what is very interesting is that Canada's National Post published an article today that they say that they have heard, and this is through the Center for Peace Communications, this is an NGO, they have said that dissidents from the Gaza Strip have been trying to communicate with members of parliament in Canada to look at ways that they can create what they call Hamas-free bubbles or Hamas-free enclaves, where humanitarian aid would be able to get in. The dissidents from Gaza say that Hamas is looting the aid and that they are aided by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency. Now, why is this important that I'm talking about this now? Because we have been talking about it at length over the last 9 months, is because it is now the first time we are hearing from Palestinians, from people in Gaza who are complaining about UNRWA's role in impeding the humanitarian aid that they so desperately need, and just how close UNRWA works with Hamas. Well, we have said it on numerous occasions. UN Watch have said it. Now you are hearing it from Palestinians themselves. So let's get to that audience question, and it comes from somebody who also again prefers to remain anonymous. I don't mind if you want to remain anonymous, guys, but you can share your questions in the comments section below or email us via our website, and it's totally okay if you don't want your name mentioned. Everybody's free to ask their questions, but they want to know, are there Gazans who don't hate Israelis? And I think that's a very, very important question, because I think we all want to know when this war is ended, if there will ever be peace in our lifetime, and we certainly hope there are. And what I have noticed, because I can't speak for Palestinians, but I can speak for what I have noticed, certainly on social media, is we are starting to hear more and more from young people in Gaza who have had enough of war, who have had enough of conflict, and they don't hate Israelis. They might blame Israel for a lot of the circumstances they find themselves in, but they don't hate Israelis. They don't interact with any Israelis. They have maybe the start of a curiosity about Israelis, but they've had enough of war. They've had enough of being held captive by Hamas. That they want a brighter future, and they recognize that it starts with understanding that Israel is not going anywhere, that Jews do have a claim to the land. And I think for those on the outside of this region, and I'm talking to specifically the anti-Israel camp, we're not going anywhere. There is nothing that is achieved by promoting continued conflict and promoting this narrative that you're going to force us out of our countries, and that the only solution is intifada or revolution. We're not going anywhere. It's unhelpful. If you really, really want to sort out this conflict, ensure freedom for Palestinians and dignity for Palestinians and security and peace for Israelis, start talking about solutions and not revolutions. But the big question is that what you want? So, me off my soapbox, and in time to remind you that before we head into the weekend, don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. We will have a very interesting article up in the next couple of days about the rights of pets during a war. Remember, many families, communities were uprooted from their homes on the border of the north and the south. But what happens to their pets in hotels? The article is very, very interesting. It will also be up on our Facebook page, which you can find at Lottel's site. And while you're there, wish us Shabbat Shalom and give us a like or a follow. We're on YouTube right here at the Israel Brief. Click on that red subscribe button. And we're on X at Lay of the Land 5. I don't know about you guys, but this heat has absolutely exhausted me. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Again, I'm going to go stick my head in a freezer, and I will see you on Monday. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.